Welcome to my channel where I teach the Bible. I hope that you will subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell so you get notified every time I put something out. Usually 4 things a day. And this is my main message for the week for January 7th, 2023. I put the main message of the week out on Friday. I'm working my way through 1st and 2nd Peter, and this one is from 1st Peter chapter 3. Verses 13 through 17. First, Second Peter are great stuff. They don't get the kind of traction that they should in the Christian community, but we need to be studying this stuff, and so I'm going through it very deliberately and very carefully and very slowly. It is powerful stuff. Now, subscribe, hit the bell, make comments, give me thumbs up. Pray that I can get more of this out to people so I can teach the Bible. My mission is, number 1, to get people to Christ. Number 2, help people with a biblical worldview. It has vanished and gone away. We need to teach people the Bible. Let's pray before we look at the Word. Father, thank you for speaking to us and doing so clearly through the Bible. Take your Word and impact our heart and change us from the inside out. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. During World War II, some American missionaries, the Morse family, escaped from China into Thailand. They were missionaries in China, and they began working in an area called Chiang Mai, Thailand. And in the 1970s, I met the patriarch of the family, an old boy named J. Russell Morris, who was very old when I met him. I probably met him in 1975, 76, somewhere in there. And he came to speak at a church where I was a youth pastor. And he was in his 80s anyway. He'd gone to China in the 1920s, and this is in the 70s, so he was really old. And one of these old boys talked about his stuff on the mission field, totally into the Bible, into the Word, and into reaching the world for Christ. Great man of God. And the Morris family got involved in helping American pilots who had been shot down flying over the hump in Burma during World War II. They would give them medical assistance and help them escape. They got involved in that. And they were doing that out of Thailand and out of Burma. During the war, the U.S. Army flew a medical missionary into the Chiang Mai area to help the Morse family, a lady. Her name was Dorothy Sterling. And I want to talk about Dorothy. She was either from Arizona or had a lot of connections in the state. I think she may have been from Arizona because I know that the pastor of the church I got involved in when I got out of the Army at the end of 1971 knew her well, and I think he'd been raised with her, and I know my mother knew her as a child growing up, and she grew up in Arizona. So I'm pretty sure she was from Arizona, but Dorothy Sterling fell in love with the Lisu people in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And she decided to invest her life there as a missionary. And that's how she lived. That's what she did. She was single, adopted some Lisu kids as her children, and worked there as a missionary. The only negative about any of this was that Dorothy had a serious case of asthma, and it could give her some problems sometimes. And sometimes she was not close to good medical help. But she was eager to do good and to serve the Lord, even if it called for her to suffer at some point. I met Dorothy probably in 1957 when she made our home kind of the center of her operations for a few months. She was there part of the time and gone part of the time, and she returned to the States to raise mission support. All the churches that we were in were independent, and missionaries had to go around all the churches and raise support, and she did that. And I think I was probably about 8 years old when she spent some time in our home, and I actually met her. As I studied 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 13 through 17, Dorothy Sterling came to mind. And I had to kind of probe my memory to kind of think about what I knew about her because it's been a long time. But she fits the subject matter perfectly, because she served God, was willing to sacrifice to do that, did sacrifice to do that, lived her life that way. First Peter chapter 3, verses 13 and 14, first part of verse 14 says this: who is going to harm you if you're eager for doing good? But even if you should suffer for doing right, you're blessed. Well, Dorothy Sterling believed that kind of thing. Dorothy Sterling was eager to do good, willing to suffer to do the right thing because she knew she would be blessed. And it's how she lived her life. It's how we all ought to live our lives. 1 Peter 3, verse 17 takes things to the next level, okay? It is better, if it is God's will, to suffer for doing good than to suffer for doing evil. To respond to God's will and suffer for doing good is what the apostle calls better. If you respond to God's will and suffer some for doing good, that's better. That's a better thing in life. If you're willing to suffer for doing good, the first principle to remember is this, and this is what he says: don't fear. If you're willing to suffer for doing good, don't fear. So who is going to harm you if you're eager for doing good? That's part of what he's talking about. It is possible that someone would want to harm you for doing the right thing before God. That happens all the time. And it's happening more and more in the United States of America, and it happens all around the world all the time. People still regularly die for the gospel in this world. For instance, I was thinking about Dorothy Sterling. If Japan had known that a plane was flying Dorothy Sterling into Chiang Mai, Thailand, to help American pilots in 1943-44, they would want to harm Dorothy Sterling and the plane that was flying her in to help the Americans. They wouldn't have been on that side. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. And it would be bad for her. She could have been killed along with the Americans flying the plane. Now remember what Jesus said in Matthew 10:28. He said this is important: do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Who's that? That's God. He's the one we should fear. Do not fear people who can kill you, and they can. Listen, you belong to Christ and you're doing his will. You may die, but you won't lose your life. Your life goes to be with the Lord. So don't fear people who can kill you, but it's more appropriate to fear God, who can kill both body and soul in hell, and who's going to always take care of you. Okay? That's who you fear. Look at verse 14. It says, but even if you should suffer for doing what is right, you're blessed. Do not fear what they fear. Do not be frightened. Don't fear what people, when you're doing the right thing and you're serving God, don't fear. Where it says, do not fear what they fear, do not be frightened. It's that passage is built on some verbiage from Isaiah chapter 8, verses 12 and 13, that describes some impending invaders who are going to invade and destroy some heathens. They were going to invade and destroy some heathens. The heathen had something to fear when being invaded because they were heathens. They weren't on God's side. But the point is that the believer is not a heathen and has no reason to fear. That's the point that's being made. It gets to verse 17 again. It is better, if it is God's will, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. You have nothing to fear because God's going to take care of you. Even when the invader comes, even when bad things happen, God's going to take care of you. When you decide to do good, even if you should suffer, you will probably have some tense moments, okay? There'll be some tough times. In 1976, I was serving as youth pastor at Lawndale Christian Church in Lawndale, California. And I had some tense moments from time to time in that neighborhood. Lawndale, though just a couple of miles from Manhattan Beach in the South Bay area of LA, Los Angeles County, was really a tough inner city environment in those days. Probably still is. I haven't been down there in years. I was there in the 1970s. It's been, a long, long time ago. Gangs were a serious issue in the neighborhood, a very serious issue. On a Sunday evening, we're having a youth ministry, and I had probably 60 kids, high school kids involved in a program in a basement, in a big room in a basement. And someone told me that some kids had broken into one of our buses. We had 2 buses. So I went out to check it out. Well, all by myself, I just walked out to check this out. And there were 4 Hispanic kids who had parked their car next to the bus and had broken in. They were just messing around in the bus. My first thought was, to invite these guys into the youth meeting. But I shortly smelled the pot that they were smoking and decided, that might not be the best idea to invite them in. So I just asked them if they would leave. Would you guys leave the property, the church campus? One of them spoke to another one of them, and he called him Shorty. Called him Shorty, like that. He said, Shorty, should we shoot him with the piece or the shotgun? Should they shoot me with the piece or the shotgun? The piece would be a pistol. I decided it made sense to call the police, okay? And they came right away, and they arrested the 4 guys. And I went to talk to the police and told them about what the guys had said about shoot me with the piece or the shotgun. And one of the officers told me to come over and take a look in the trunk of their car. So I went over with him to take a look in the trunk of these kids' car. And he showed me a handgun and a shotgun in their trunk. And the officer made the point that they had exactly what they were talking about when they talked to me. They had exactly that in their trunk. And he told me that they thought the shotgun was the murder weapon in a recent gang shooting. Did I have reason to fear? Well, concern would have been appropriate, but not fear. Not fear. Why? Because I was doing good, and I was having some suffering, a little bit of modest suffering, a little emotional suffering for doing the right thing. But if you suffer for doing good under God's will, that's always a good thing. There's nothing bad about that. And he'll see you through it. He'll get you through. He got me through that and a lot of other things. Back in 1969, I was stationed in the Army in Germany. And my dad was working as a civilian in Vietnam, worked for a big company over there. He shipped and received and warehoused and distributed half of the material for the Vietnam War for this big company called Pacific Architects and Engineers. And my mom wrote me, I'm in Germany. I'm stationed in Germany in the Army. And she wrote me to tell me that she was going to go visit my dad in Vietnam and spend a month with him. And now in those days, you got to remember this 1969, you couldn't pick up a cell phone or go someplace and just call someone in another country. You had to go down to the German train station, they called it the Autobahn, to make a transatlantic call. So I went down to the German train station and made a call to my mom. And when I got her on the phone, I said, hey, Mom, okay, I know Dad's in Vietnam, okay, and I know you want to go see him and you got a trip planned and all that stuff, but has anyone pointed out to you that there's a war going on over there? She laughed, she thought that was so funny. And she went, she spent 2 weeks with my dad in Saigon, and she played the piano and sang for the troops in chapel, and my dad brought some lessons with the Bible. And then they went to Hong Kong for a week by themselves. And you know what they did after that? They went to Chiang Mai, Thailand, and spent a week with Dorothy Sterling. Now, Dorothy made it clear in the week that they spent with her that she did do some suffering for Christ in her ministry, and it was tough on her. But she also made it clear that she had no fear. She had no fear. See, you can deal with suffering, and it works like this. You can deal with suffering if you set apart Christ as Lord and keep a clear conscience, okay? Notice verse 15. It's very important. But in your hearts, set apart Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for your hope, for the hope you have. Do this with gentleness and respect. What drives the willingness to suffer for doing good? And this is true for all of us, folks. What drives people like Dorothy Sterling to suffer for the cause of Christ? It has to do with setting apart Christ as Lord in your heart. You're saying, Jesus Christ is the ruler of my life. He is my Lord. It's about submitting your inner life to Jesus as Lord. And then it all shows up on the outside as surrender to service for him at any cost. That's where Dorothy Sterling lived. When someone wants to know what drives your hope in Christ, have a personal answer for them, The answer needs to be given with gentleness and respect, and it should make one thing clear always: why you have surrendered to Jesus as Lord and what difference he makes in your life. And it has to be personal, okay? It has to be personal. One of the things I usually tell people is that something about from the ages of 16 to 23, I spent a lot of time drunk, and partying and doing stupid things. But since I surrendered to Christ in January of 1972, I haven't had a drink. That's the kind of difference that Christ can make in your life, and in a lot of other ways too. You got to make it personal. Let people know the difference Jesus has made in your life. And then notice verse 16, keeping a clear conscience so that those who speak maliciously against you, your good behavior in Christ, may be ashamed of their slander. Make sure that your conduct is so clear of evil that if someone speaks against your conduct, it's obvious that they're slandering you because your conduct is righteous, okay? People need to know that your behavior is godly. And if they speak against you, it's slander and ought to be obvious to everybody else. And it all comes down to this: do good. Do good for the sake of Christ, even if it causes you to suffer. Dorothy Sterling lived that way, lived that out on the mission field in Chiang Mai, Thailand, for many, many years. From the mid-40s into the 70s. I had been out of the Army just a few months in early 1972, and I was in a worship service at First Christian Church in Phoenix, Arizona. The pastor there, and I'd known this guy all my life, it was a man named Dr. Bill Boyce. Bill was the first chaplain on Omaha Beach on Normandy on D-Day, the very first chaplain on the beach, and just happened to be the most decorated chaplain in World War II, in the thick of the war, and for a long, long time. That church was a Living Link support church for Dorothy Sterling. In other words, they provided the majority of her support for the mission field. Dr. Boyce had known her most of his life. And during this worship service that I was in early 1972, someone handed Bill a note as he began to preach his sermon. It was about Dorothy Sterling. And he read the note. And it said something like this: Dorothy Sterling had an asthma attack in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and she did not survive. And when Dr. Boyce read that, the most decorated chaplain in World War II wept and could not continue because someone was willing to suffer to serve Christ and do good, and he knew her, and it affected his heart. It affected him. It made him cry. One of the associate pastors had to take over the service. Dorothy Sterling did good even if it caused her to suffer, and it did. The lesson for all of us is to go thou and do likewise. Let's pray. Father, help us to be willing to suffer to do good. The world needs Jesus, Heavenly Father. Help us do what it takes to announce his good news to the world, even if it causes some difficulty and suffering for us. Help us do good, even if we suffer. We know that you'll deliver us from it no matter what. And we know that we'll meet Dorothy Sterling and others like her in heaven. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Bless you. Have a great day.